colourful music, interactive soundscapes of the Blob. We will run the session as usual with about 45 minutes of presentation, and then open up for 15 minutes of questions at the end. It's a real pleasure to introduce John Guscott. He is currently Senior Audio Designer at Luton and responsible for the soundtrack of the Blob. Prior to that, he spent about 7 years in the UK at Leeds, where he was responsible for composing and audio design on numerous titles, which he's going to tell you all about. So on behalf of GCAP, please join me in welcoming John Guscott.
Hi everybody. It's great to see so many people attending this talk. I'm pleasantly surprised. Thanks for the intro. As you said, I'm working at Blob. I'm a senior audio designer. I've been there for about 4 years. Before I begin, actually, I wouldn't mind just trying to have a little bit of a feel for who you guys are, what you guys do. I mean, do we have any audio designers or composers in the audience? Great stuff. And other game dev staff? Sort of. Okay. And any students or anything? Okay, great. That's a nice mix. I will be focusing most of the talk from a musical and audio point of view, and I'll try not to get too muso about it, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so, who or what's the Blob? Well, just for those of you who don't know, the Blob was an original IP, retitle that was released last year, an action platform painting game, a bit of an original notion whereby it's not like a traditional platform. Now, there's a little bit more painting element, which is kind of a creative, slightly abstract and fun variant of your normal platform title. Just only on the Wii, so we didn't have to worry about any cross-platform audio development or any other kind of cross-platform issues there. And we critically, it was fairly well received as well. It got some really good reviews actually across the board. It was a good title to work on. Being an original IP, we had a lot of creativity, and especially from an audio perspective, there wasn't anything tying us down to a license or any preconceived notions of what the Blob is or what it should sound like. So, from a development point of view, the game was a real joy and quite rare. You don't often get games like that when you're working in-house in the game industry. So, overall, it was a good experience. A quick bit of backstory. This evil corporation has invaded this peaceful city called Chrome City, and it's declared the colour was a crime and sucked all colour out of the world, leaving a drab, grey environment that the Blob finds himself in. The citizens are kind of oppressed by this sort of dictatorship, and they're just walking around not knowing what to do with themselves in this grey state. And the Blob come along, liberate civilians, restore colour and vitality to the world, and just make everything cool. There we have him. The main character is in the middle. These little guys on the side are the colour underground. They're the revolutionaries who helped the Blob along the way and set in missions. So there's a kind of tongue-in-cheek revolutionary undertone to the whole game about fighting up and resisting oppression and restoring vitality. So, onto the music. Fairly early on, right at the beginning of pre-production, we were talking about ways of how to link the concept of painting and linking that with music in an interactive context. The initial idea was that the intensity levels of the music... Oh, by the way, has anyone actually played the game? Okay, I'll go with the quite a few, so that's great. You'll know what I mean in that basically, yeah, the intensity of the music responds to the actual colour that the player is restoring back into the world with the painting element of the gameplay. We designed an entirely new interactive music system from the ground up. This is quite an important aspect of it, which I'll talk about in due course. Okay, so if anyone is familiar with how music works in games, there are a couple of ways that you can play back music in an interactive context in a game. And the way that we did it with the Blob is by interleaving stems, which is a technique whereby the music gets submixed into groups, and instead of playing a stereo mix of your music, which is a kind of finalised, mastered mix of what you're going to hear, the music is instead submixed into groups of separate WAV files, which are then built into one data stream which gets read from disk. We use the Fmod tool to do this throughout the game. We're using Fmod Designer for the sound events and music events alongside this tool, which is included in their package, which is essentially a way of interleaving data stems together. Now this is one of the interesting aspects of it, due to, obviously, you guys are familiar with bandwidth issues when you're streaming data. When you've got music playing and dialogue and levels loading in and out behind the scenes, it actually meant that we're restricted in our music stems to being working in mono and at 32 kHz. So what we're doing there is we're kind of sacrificing high-end definition for interactivity, which is a trade-off that I was more than willing to make when you actually see the interactive nature of the music. You understand why, and it's just a fact of life with data streaming. So what essentially is happening is that the music is crossfading between these stems depending on how well the player is doing. So none of the music is actually playing, the 6 stems of music that are playing, they're never playing back at the same time. There's a system where the music engine will switch between them, and we'll talk about that as we go on. Okay, so the basic premise is that the score of the game, or it's actually referred to as colour energy within the game, dictates how intense the music becomes. One of the elements of the custom tools that we developed was the ability to be able to plot a music data file on a graph, whereby, imagine a graph where the x-axis is volume and the y-axis is score, player score. So each stem of music has a line, and you're able to draw in the behaviour of the music as the intensity progresses. Certain stems will be faded in and out depending on the drawing that you make on the graph. Each music track is completely customizable with regard to this. And it's, without showing you a screenshot, basically you end up with a graph where you've got 6 lines, each of them different colours. Well, it's actually 5 lines, I'll explain why in a minute. But each line has a different colour and has a stem. So as the score increases, tracks get faded in and out depending on how the music track has been mixed. I mentioned it was actually 5 stems because we reserve 1 stem for what we call the inked stem, or the ink stream, which when you're painting and rolling around the city, what will happen fairly often is you'll get caught by the ink operation. The little inky enemies are after you, they're trying to kind of track you down, and if you get caught by them, they hit you with a baton or you get hit by an ink bomb. Suddenly the blob is covered in ink, he can no longer paint, and he's getting shrunk down, and you can't breathe properly, and you need to find water. So from a music perspective, all the interactivity that's been happening suddenly stops, and the ink stem will play, and you have to kind of suddenly find water to get cleansed. So I'll demonstrate this firsthand in due course. The concept of mixed snapshots is also important, I think, in many music systems, and what that means in a nutshell is that you can have predetermined ducking or other mix elements suddenly come into play whenever you want, when the game dictates is needed. So for example, there's a sound effect where a big transform engine gets released, whereby once you've got enough colour energy, you can unlock a pickup